Vice Chair of the House Committee investigating January 6th, Liz Cheney, revealed the committee has first-hand testimony that Ivanka Trump asked her father to intervene at least twice, pleading with the former president to stop the violence. Here's Cheney discussing the matter on ABC over the weekend.
We have first-hand testimony that his daughter Ivanka went in at least twice to ask him to please stop this violence. Any man who would not do so, any man who would provoke a violent assault on the Capitol to stop the counting of electoral votes, any man who would watch television as police officers were being beaten, as his supporters were invading the Capitol of the United States, is clearly unfit for future office, clearly can never be anywhere near the Oval Office ever again.
Mississippi Democrat and chairman of the committee, Benny Thompson, told CNN, quote, the panel has, quote, significant testimony that the White House had been told to do something, and added that they want to verify all of it ahead of their report. The Hill's Julia Manchester and Senior Director of Policy at the Conservative Partnership Institute, Rachel Bovard, join us to discuss. Thank you both for being with us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, Julia, this is where we've now heard various reportings of, people in Trump world attempting to reach the president on January 6th from, people at pundits at Fox, members of the Trump family, other political figures. How does fleshing out this kind of picture even more, developing it further, is that going to change anything, though? Because we kind of know at this point, right, that everyone was trying to get to Trump and he behaved how he behaved, and here we are.
Yeah, it paints a clearer picture, I think, for when the committee presents all of this evidence. Look, Ivanka Trump was seen as someone who was very closely trusted by her father, one of the few people who was really in her father's very tight-knit inner circle. So the visual of her trying to get in touch with him, to contact him and tell him to, condemn this and try to stop the attack on the Capitol definitely paints a picture of where the Trump family and the Trump administration really was as a whole. It does confirm a lot of what we've already known. We know that, like you said, pundits, other members of the Trump family were very much pleading with the president and his chief of staff, Mark Meadows, to stop this. But I think overall, this paints a clearer picture. And someone like Ivanka Trump, who played such a consequential role in the administration and in Trump's inner circle, definitely shows really how dire straits were that day to get in touch with the president and try to get him to take action.
And Rachel, following this news, I almost feel like a crazy person, that you have the president of the United States, as Julia said, sitting in the Oval Office with people begging him to stop the violence. He goes for hours just sitting there watching it on television, allowing it to unfold, before finally at the very end saying, okay, guys, go in peace, enough. What is going on here that this is still a live political question rather than a complete disqualification of an entire political movement?
Well, I think the text messages presented by Mark Meadows, kind of the testimony we're now hearing about Ivanka Trump running into her father saying, please stop this, actually undermines the entire narrative of the entire January 6th investigation, which is that there was some centrally planned nefarious act to make this happen. It was chaos, is what it sounds like. It sounds like no one expected this to happen, and everyone was trying to figure out what to do about it. I don't know that we really know what Trump was doing in those moments. I think the timeline that Liz Cheney presented to the committee between, when things started to unravel and his first public action against it was wrong. I think it was actually, she presented it as much longer than it actually was. And I think when he actually tried to put something out on Twitter, Twitter had already banned him at that point. So it just sounds like there was complete chaos. Should he have said something earlier? I think that that's a political judgment, a personal judgment that people can make on the president. But I don't think that the committee has the evidence or the standing to make the claim they are, which is exactly what Trump was doing moment to moment, and everything they're trying to put on this. At the end of the day, the FBI has investigated this. The FBI, as corrupt as they are, has come to the conclusion this was not centrally organized or planned. So what is going on with this select committee is pure politics at this point. They are trying to make a political point.
No, so I agree with you. Yes, I don't think a kind of conspiracy has been demonstrate. In fact, it's so far-fetched, it's ridiculous. And then trying to get overly nitpicky about how exactly long did Trump wait to weigh in. Yeah, I agree with you on all that, and I mean I think this commission focusing on that, or to an extent existing at all, reflects kind of that misplaced priority. But you still, because for me, this is not a mystery, right? Trump said crazy things about the election for weeks and sort of stoked the fires of a mob action, which then occurred, and that was the morally wrong thing. That's not really what we're kind of investigating at this point. And in fact, the only mechanism for holding him accountable for that was impeachment, which failed. The impeachment went through, not the removal or whatever that would have looked like. So for me, it's kind of a settled issue because, okay, Trump was charged with this and cleared, so what are we supposed to do now? But it is, I think it's interesting and regrettable that he seems positioned to remain still such an influential figure in the Republican Party, given all of that. Can you maybe respond to that briefly, Rachel?
Well, I think, everything that you're pointing to are political questions at the end of the day, right? This idea of whether Trump comported himself correctly or not. There are criminal charges that could be applied if people thought he did something wrong. They could charge him with incitement. They haven't. They could charge him with sedition. They haven't. And they haven't charged any of the 700 people DOJ has arrested, for trampling on the Capitol grounds. None of these people have been charged. So if you want to bring a criminal case against the president, do it. The fact of the matter is there's no evidence to support that. And an incitement case would probably fail, as legal experts have weighed in, numerous times on that point. So I think what you're talking about and what this whole thing is about is really a judgment for the voters. And I think that, there's some people, I think, on the Democrat side who find that deeply unsatisfying. They want political punishment, and banished from public life forever. But at the end of the day, that's not how our system works. If you can't bring criminal charges, then the voters are the people that have to decide. And, to your point, Trump does remain, I think, the most powerful and popular figure in the Republican Party. I just think Republicans view this situation just frankly differently than a lot of Democrats who view it as, the end of democracy. Republicans look at the same set of facts and I think they find it eminently regrettable, but I don't think they view it with the same stakes that Democrats do. And that's why you're seeing Trump, still surge in popularity. And
I do think it's fair to say that the more appropriate venue would be the FBI to look into this. On the question of the timeline, I guess we'll learn more. But Julie, I'm curious what you can tell us. My recollection is that Trump did tweet. He did tweet something, but it was kind of a milquetoast, don't be too rough kind of tweet that a lot of his people close to him criticized him for and said, come on, no, that's not going to do it. You got to do more than this. Then he posted a video later saying, I love you all, go in peace. That's pretty much a direct quote.
We love you.
Yeah, we love
home.
We love you. Go home in peace. We are a peaceful people, peaceful movement, and so that is what finally ended it. So what's your understanding of the timeline as we can firmly establish it at this point? Because I think it's fair to say that it wasn't precisely orchestrated like, okay, you're going to hit this door, you're going to hit this door, and we're going to have lieutenants who are organizing it in this particular fashion. But it does seem to be the case that he was quite okay for a very long time, for enough time for many, many text messages to flow in to allow it to continue happening.
Exactly. And we have to wonder what the president was doing while he was receiving that text messaging. There is reporting that would suggest that he was watching this all unfold on television in the White House. So I think that raises a lot of questions as to, how much he really cared or how much he even wanted to stop this. And I think milquetoast is absolutely the correct word to use to describe his response. He very much put out a bland response, trying to seemingly keep both sides happy, if you will, to appease those who were trying to get him to tell them to stop, and at the same time not wanting to offend his own base. This seemed to be something that he clearly was interested in watching and didn't want to seemingly initially want to quash. I mean, if he wanted to do that, this would have happened earlier. I think there's also the point when you look at, how much these rioters were listening to the president. I think there's footage that we've seen in a number of these documentaries that have been released about January 6th that shows that some rioters were very much willing to listen to the president to say, let's go home and such. But there were also some that clearly did not want to go and wanted to continue rioting and causing chaos in the United States Capitol. So, I think there are supporters of the president who would say, well, if he said something, it wouldn't necessarily have meant anything. It was too far gone at that point. But it's not a good look when your own daughter and, some of your strongest supporters are trying to get you to stop it, and you're seemingly not listening. And when you finally do, it seems almost reluctant to stop it.
Yeah. All right, and well, since we talked about the tweets, let me just read them real quick, and then we got to wrap. So he tweeted, Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones which they were asked to previously certify. USA demands the truth. Then he tweets, please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful. That was his tweet in response to people begging him to intervene. Then he says, I am asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. No violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you. And then these are the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long. Go home with love and in peace. Remember this day forever. Donald J. Trump.
He's a poet.
He is a poet.
He's a poet.
He is a poet. I did, some of that is all caps.
Julia and Rachel, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
And we'll be back with more Rising, possibly more poetry, right after this.